Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode is regarding the recent fatal grizzly bear attack on 2 hikers in Banff National Park, Alberta, Canada. This is familiar country to those of you who regularly tune into our channel, and the details behind this tragic event are still coming out. Around Banff, the peaks serrate the skyline like saw teeth. They climb to around 9,000 feet in elevation, and some even higher. The valleys here are very dense forests of pine, fir, and spruce trees, with quaking asps and poplars sprinkled here and there in pockets. Nearly every valley here has a creek, stream, or river running through it, with banks packed with willow and a myriad of berry bushes. Elk, deer, bison, moose, and woodland caribou keep the greenery trimmed in a veritable garden, and predators like coyotes, wolves, cougars, lynx, as well as black bears keep the prey animals running. The park also has a very low number of grizzly bears prowling the shadows. On Friday, September 29, 2023, 2 hikers were venturing into the chilly and lonesome backcountry of Banff with their dog. For privacy's sake, we'll refer to these hikers as Bill and Bonnie, with their dog Fritz. Their information is yet to be released, and out of respect for their privacy, we will use these names to refer to them. Bill and Bonnie were devoted to each other, and enjoyed nothing more than spending time in the backcountry together. Not only did they enjoy being together in the backcountry, they practiced bear safety and avoidance right down to the letter. They brushed up on just what to do in the forest to avoid attracting bears, and even went as far as carrying a communication system called InReach by Garmin, which allows users to send emergency texts. Bill and Bonnie were friends with a woman named Kim Titchener, who founded an organization called Bear Safety and More. This organization provides hikers and other outdoor enthusiasts education and training on how to exist in harmony with wildlife, according to their website. Courses offered by them include bear safety training, bear hazard training, as well as courses on how to properly utilize bear spray to prevent or stop bear attacks. Bill and Bonnie's standard protocol was to send a text to a family member each time they settled into a new camping spot. Their GPS information is automatically transmitted by the InReach system as the text message is sent. This tiny bit of technology is only 2 inches by 4 inches and weighs a mere 3.5 ounces. It can track your progress via satellite and guide you back along your route if you become lost. Bill and Bonnie relied on their InReach to let their loved ones know that they were safe and sound on the night in question, with a text that indicated they'd set up camp at their new location at 5 p.m. at the Red Deer River Valley just west of Yahatinda Ranch. Now, fall is a crucial time of year for grizzlies. They're experiencing a condition called hyperphagia. During this state, bears can be seen searching for food day and night, when typically they're more active from dusk to dawn. The urge and need to consume more calories causes them to forage more vigorously to help them pack on needed fat for hibernation. If the grizzly has not consumed enough calories to store enough fat, they may not make it through the winter, or will have to emerge from their winter dens in search of food. The grizzly's caloric demand could be as high as 50,000 calories per day to reach this survival threshold. This state of desperation puts grizzlies on a dangerous path when involved with human beings. While researching this episode, I came across a few sources indicating that grizzlies spend this time of year in the valleys, searching for vegetation, but it takes an enormous amount of vegetation to reach 50,000 calories. More realistically, they're talking about roots, berries, and nuts, which are more calorically dense than shoots and green vegetation. A single grizzly bear can gorge itself on 200,000 buffalo berries in a single day. Bill and Bonnie could not have known it, but this area experienced a late frost in the past spring, which froze many of the berry flowers, causing a lack of one of the grizzly's primary food sources. In fact, this phenomenon was observed as far south as central Idaho, where elderberry bushes are yielding a very low crop as well. As Bill and Bonnie settled in for the evening, their loved ones were put at ease with their text update. They knew that the hikers would never travel at night and would always set up their camp well before dusk in a precautionary step to avoid surprising any grizzlies that may be in the area. Although these precautions are best practices, I could find no source indicating that Bill and Bonnie packed bear spray on their camping trip. At about 8 p.m. on Friday night, an emergency notification was received by Parks Canada Dispatch Center in Banff National Park. The notification requested emergency help in response to a bear attack. Parks Canada immediately ordered the Wildlife Human Attack Response Team to the location. The area was experiencing severe weather, and the helicopter carrying the team was not approved to fly. The team opted to hike into the location by foot. Given that the area is only accessible by foot or horseback, this process took the better part of a day. They arrived at the scene around 1 a.m. early Sunday morning and found the remains of Bill and Bonnie, along with the carcass of their dog Fritz. All three were dead, apparently killed during a grizzly bear attack. Upon their arrival, the response team found a grizzly bear guarding the bodies. This bear was said to be exhibiting aggressive behavior. This behavior may vary from chuffing and false charges to the bear refusing to leave the area after being confronted. Typically, any bear involved in a defensive attack will leave the scene after the perceived threat has been disabled, but this bear wasn't leaving. It demonstrated aggressive enough behavior for the response team to feel like it would present a danger to other members of the public. They shot the bear to prevent it from continually guarding Bill and Bonnie's remains. At about 5 a.m. the same morning, members of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police arrived at the attack scene. They recovered Bill and Bonnie's remains, as well as the carcass of Fritz, and transported them back to the town of Sundre. The authorities also recovered the grizzly bear's carcass to analyze via necropsy. Evidence from the attack scene was preserved for a forensic investigation as well. Officials immediately shut down all backcountry areas surrounding the attack. Violators of this order may be fined up to $25,000 if discovered in the closed area. Bill and Bonnie's deaths were the first in about 50 years in Banff National Park. Parks Canada issued a statement of condolences to the family of the victims of the bear attack and remind the public that fatal bear attacks are very rare. Titchener states that bear attacks are increasing exclusively because of the increase in visitors venturing into the backcountry and are not connected with bear population densities. Given that there are reportedly only 60 grizzly bears in Banff, the odds of any visitor seeing a bear are very low, let alone being attacked or confronted by an aggressive bear. Titchener indicates that there are not too many bears, but too many people. She also states that backcountry visitors do not invest in their own safety by taking courses like those offered by her organization. Titchener described Bill and Bonnie's fatal grizzly bear attack as a case of them being in the wrong place at the wrong time, but they had reportedly followed all the bear safety rules. She states that half the time when carnivores attack humans, it is because people are doing something wrong or are not packing the right equipment, but fails to indicate what her friends did wrong or what gear they should have packed to stop or prevent their fatal attack. For some reason, she seems hesitant to indicate that a powerful firearm is part of that necessary gear. Parks Canada tells visitors that the safest approach is to avoid a confrontation with a bear whenever possible. If it is unavoidable, they advise people to use bear spray or to play dead. Their final bit of advice is to fight back if none of these strategies prevent or stop the bear attack. My question is, how can a person fight back after they are injured while playing dead? Once a bear is in attack mode and tastes blood, even a defensive attack can turn predatory, given the predatory nature of bears. Parks Canada states that bears are being extinguished due to human intolerance, trophy hunting, and habitat loss. They say the grizzly's primary food source is bison, and the loss of habitat reduces bison numbers for bears to feed upon. According to the U.S. Department of the Interior, bison numbers are higher now than they've been in nearly 150 years, which is a direct contradiction to the previously mentioned Parks Canada statement. Merle Fox is the owner of Sunset Guiding and Outfitting, located just west of Sundre. He's been running his outfit there for the last 14 years and states that he wasn't surprised when he'd heard of the fatal bear attacks this week. He cites that the time of year and the year's berry crop failure combined to create a dangerous situation. He believes this attack was predatory and opportunistic on the part of the grizzly. Fox reports that his guides are always armed when they lead customers into the backcountry. My question is, if this outfitter knows that berry crops failed this year and how it creates a tenuous situation between people and bears, why didn't Parks Canada provide the public with this information? Given this grizzly killed 2 people and their dog and did not flee the area afterward, indicates all the hallmarks of a predatory attack. Adding in the fact that it acted aggressively toward the response team and guarded the corpses of the people, you have some pretty clear evidence of these claims. In light of this developing tragedy, I have a few questions for you. Do you think the government has a responsibility to report important environmental conditions such as berry crop failures or low salmon numbers to backcountry visitors? Is the Canadian government liable for people being injured or killed by bears due to restrictions on carrying firearms in national parks there? Did having so much experience in the backcountry lead Bill and Bonnie to overconfidence in their safety? What do you think were the contributing factors that led to Bill and Bonnie's fatal grizzly bear attack? I'll be glad to read and respond to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it.
Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks.
Today's episode takes us to no man's land, or maybe it is every man's land. The border between Idaho and Montana was the precise location of a very interesting grizzly bear attack. The Cabinet Yaak Mountains lay just north of the Kootenai River and occupy about 4,200 square miles of prime grizzly bear habitat. In fact, grizzlies have been studied there since the mid-1980s, and many of the bears have been collared and tracked so scientists can learn more about their habits. Since research began, around 22 grizzlies have been released there. The geography is rugged granite mountains with an elevation of around 6,000 feet on the highest peaks. The gently sloping valleys are packed with stands of pine, spruce, and fir trees with elk, moose, and white-tailed deer dashing amongst them. The bodies of water are ringed with willow and alder stands, as well as a multitude of berry bushes. The predators of this area include wolves, coyotes, cougars, and black bears, as well as a small but growing number of grizzly bears. Steve Stevenson was a 39-year-old hunter and outdoor enthusiast. He was a gold and silver miner for a company by the name of Highcroft out of Winnemucca, Nevada. He was married and had 2 daughters, aged 14 and 10 years old at the time of their father's fatal bear attack. Everyone who knew Steve liked him for his friendly and gregarious demeanor. On Friday, September 16, 2011 at 10 a.m., Steve and his 20-year-old hunting partner Ty Bell were stalking black bears in the area. Steve had frequented these mountains many times before and found the hunting there productive and fun. I know most people who love the outdoors find the time restorative and peaceful, and these 2 hunting buddies felt the same way about it. Given the men were planning on hunting very near the Idaho and Montana border, they prepared themselves by acquiring licenses and tags in both states. They had even completed the black bear grizzly bear identification class required by the state of Montana prior to issuing hunters' bear tags. Along with Ty and Steve, the addition of 2 of their friends brought their hunting party to a total of 4 men. The hunting party split into 2 groups of 2 men after spotting grizzly bear sign in their hunting area. They stayed in pairs to ensure safety during the hunt as much as possible. Ty and Steve decided to hunt together, and as the men glassed and hiked the trails, they found grizzly bear sign. Prior to going on this hunt, they agreed that if they saw a grizzly bear, they would immediately leave and avoid tangling with one of the dangerous and temperamental Bruins. I could find no source indicating they were packing bear spray, but Ty was packing his hunting rifle, while Steve left his at camp. Steve was along to help Ty pursue his bear, so leaving his rifle behind was probably thought of as a formality, as it would be just another heavy object he would have to pack. Ty and Steve had been covering ground and checking wallows and trails for tracks when they spotted something a short distance away. Black bears can come in an array of colors ranging from white and blonde all the way across the color spectrum to brown and black. In certain situations, black bears and grizzly bears can be very difficult to differentiate between. Some black bears are as big as grizzly bears, so size is not always an easy gauge of the species of these 2 bears. Most people know that grizzlies have a dish-shaped profile and have a big hump of muscle at the top of their shoulders, but if a grizzly is not particularly muscular, it may not have a prominent hump of muscle. To add to the confusion, grizzly bears can be very dark in color, so telling them apart, especially in the tense environment a bear hunt can create, is not always as easy as it seems. Ty had spotted a bear that he thought would be a nice trophy for his collection. The meat was a plus, as the hide is a beautiful artifact many hunters have mounted or turned into a rug. When a black bear has a unique pattern of coloration in their hide, it is an even more valuable trait, so this bear was intriguing to Ty. Ty quickly worked himself into a position for a shot and fired on the bear, which immediately showed signs of being struck by his bullet. When a bear is hit with a bullet, it is common to see a change in their physical position. They may turn around in search of the source of the impact or pain, growling and swiping at a yet-to-be-visible foe. Steve and Ty figured that the bear would soon die from the wound inflicted by the hunter, as the bullet seemed to have struck the bear in a lethal part of its body. They watched as the bear fled into the thick undergrowth and decided to wait to let the bullet take its effect on the bear. Best practices in hunting indicate a short wait of around 30 minutes before taking up the blood trail is a good idea, so the men waited for 45 minutes just to be sure. When the time was up, the men began following the bear's blood trail and tracks. They could see the bear's path meandering through the underbrush and winding through the forest. It wasn't long until they glanced up and could see the bear lying dead on the ground. Ty started to approach the apparently dead bear when it surprised him by jumping to its feet once he was only a few yards away. The hunters were both on the same side of the grizzly, with Steve behind and off to one side of Ty by a few yards. Steve could see the grizzly closing in on Ty and immediately jumped into action. He yelled at the bear and took a few steps toward it, to draw its attention to him, and the bear grimly obliged. The grizzly turned its course toward Steve and quickly closed in on him instead. Steve could see the 400-pound grizzly churning its legs as it powered its way toward him, with its eyes intensely focused on him. The bear knocked Steve to the ground, clamped its jaws onto his leg, and gave him a violent shake by tossing its head back and forth quickly. The grizzly then moved its attack toward Steve's upper body and stood over him, venting its rage. Ty was amazed at how quickly this bear reacted and attacked Steve. He leveled the sights of his rifle on the bear and began firing into the bear in an attempt to kill it before it could kill Steve. He completely emptied his rifle and sprinted back to camp to grab Steve's rifle. His adrenaline surged as he ran back toward his friend and the furious grizzly bear. Upon arriving at the attack scene, Ty could see the bear still standing over Steve. He fired Steve's rifle into the bear and it piled up, dead from several wounds inflicted by the hunter's rifles. Ty quickly ran to Steve's side in an attempt to help him. He could see an enormous wound in his friend's chest and several gashes and puncture marks on Steve's legs. Ty immediately pulled out his cell phone and somehow managed to get reception. He requested help for his friend, but the area was very remote, with no roads or trails providing easy access. The authorities sent out a medical helicopter to the location of the attack, provided by the cell phone's GPS. The coordinates happened to be precisely on the Idaho and Montana state line. Once they arrived, the authorities and medical professionals pronounced Steve dead. They loaded his body into the helicopter and turned it over to Lincoln County, who turned it over to the Montana State Crime Lab for analysis. After examining Steve's body, the coroner and crime lab analysts declared that he had died from one of Ty's bullets fired in his friend's defense. The bullet had struck Steve in the chest after passing through the grizzly and was the primary cause of his death. The carcass of the grizzly was taken in for a necropsy. It was found to be a large and healthy male grizzly bear of between 6 and 8 years of age. It reportedly weighed around 400 pounds. Janet Price was Steve's mother, and she indicated she was not surprised by her son's sacrificial actions to draw the grizzly's attention away from his young hunting partner. She indicated that he would have done that for anyone, as that was his caring and giving nature. This isn't the first case of a black bear hunter mistaking a grizzly bear for a black bear. In the year 2007, a Tennessee man shot a grizzly by mistake in central Idaho. Grizzlies were last spotted in this area in 1946, so it was fairly safe to assume any bear there would likely be a black bear. Grizzlies are still under protection from hunting in the lower 48 states, with the exception of defense of self or property. Steve's death resulted in legislation sponsored in the Idaho legislature designed to amend the Endangered Species Act to permit killing a grizzly in self-defense or the defense of another person. After reviewing the facts surrounding this sad and difficult episode, I am left with a few questions for you. Do you think it is always easy to tell the difference between a black bear and a grizzly bear? Would Steve have survived if he had carried his hunting rifle with him? Do you think there could be a hybrid population of part grizzly, part black bears that don't exhibit clear grizzly traits or traits of both species? Would you shoot a grizzly bear while it was standing over one of your hunting buddies and attacking him? I will be glad to read and respond to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us back in time to a place where people lived closely to nature and all of its dangers. Before the flying freeways and soaring buildings, the country around San Bernardino, California was wild, desolate, and fraught with dangers. The elevation of this area is generally under 1,000 feet above sea level, and the buildings that are now there were once speckled with pinyon juniper and chaparral in the valley floors. To the east lies San Bernardino National Forest, which is still crowded with ponderosa lodgepole and sugar pine stands, and even has some oak woodlands mixed in there. The animals of the area include mule deer, with bighorn sheep dashing their way across the desert slopes. The predators in this area include coyotes, cougars, bobcats, and black bears. But at the time of this episode, the area also had enormous grizzly bears, and plenty of them too. In the mid-1800s, Mexican settlers were cultivating the arable lands, but mountain men and their families still roamed the forests, trapping animals for their furs to sell to the fur trading companies. These men risked their lives facing down blizzards and deserts, bears, and hostile natives to eke out a living in the only way that brought them happiness. One such man was Cristobal Isaac Slover. Around 1842, Slover had helped establish Fort Pueblo in Colorado, where he worked alongside a Jim Bridger, Kit Carson, and a few other hardy souls. He arrived at the fort with a mule loaded with beaver pelts, which proved to the fort occupants that he was an able and talented hunter. They immediately put him in charge of supplying the fort with meat. Alongside of John Brown Sr., he and their hunting party spent the time harvesting deer, antelope, elk, and buffalo to keep the fort fed and running. He was described as a peaceable man who was quiet and reserved in his demeanor. Slover was well known for his passion of pursuing the area's plentiful and enormous grizzlies. He called them kabibs, but the reason why isn't known. He was a talented hunter and wouldn't take advice from anyone, as many mountain men were set in their ways and stubborn. Other hunters who accompanied Slover advised him to take a more cautious approach to pursuing the bears and tried to get him to avoid the dangerous methods he found most useful. But he would never listen to them, as he preferred to face the giant bears without fear. Slover would get the itch to chase a grizzly and just disappear, sometimes for weeks at a time. Then he would show back up, often with a mule load full of various pelts and meat. Slover would trade, sell, or barter them for whatever supplies he needed, then disappear once again into the wilderness. At one point, Slover did his typical disappearing act, but never returned to report to Brown. Puzzled about what had come of Slover, Brown frequently thought of him over the coming years. In 1852, Brown traveled to an area in California called Aquamansa and heard tale of a man named Slover. He knew he had to find out if this was his old friend and hunting partner, so he asked for directions on how to find Slover's house and headed out. After Brown and his wife arrived at Slover Mountain, Slover and his wife, Donna Barbarita, welcomed them into their home. The ladies became fast friends, and the men enjoyed reminiscing about the good old days on the Colorado frontier, with their gray hair affirming their experiences. Now, just because Slover was older and no longer at the top of his game didn't mean he didn't get the urge to chase grizzlies. He would frequently wander off into the mountains alone to pursue them. Shortly after the Browns' visit ended, the elderly mountain man did just that. Accompanied by his hunting partner, Bill McMines, he decided to check out the area up the left fork of the Cajon Pass. This location lies just west of the Mojave Desert. Now, I know what you're thinking. There are no grizzlies in the Mojave Desert, but don't get ahead of me. The Cajon Pass traverses a small mountain range, and that is where the bears lived, as Slover knew all too well. On October 27th of 1854, the 68-year-old Slover and McMines climbed up the forested slopes and navigated the creeks and rivers until they had almost reached the Cajon Pass, when they spotted a large grizzly bear. They quickly conferred with each other and decided to pursue the bear. The men worked their way around the mountain and ended up where they had last viewed the bear, though they had temporarily lost sight of it while climbing. As they entered a small clearing, the giant bear suddenly came into view. Slover quickly shouldered his rifle and leveled his sights on the bear. The shot from his rifle echoed through the canyon as the bullet tore its path. Slover and McMines watched as the bear dropped, then regained its feet. It was mortally wounded, apparently, and slowly dragged itself into the nearest patch of brush. The men tried to keep an eye on exactly where the bear had went, but as it disappeared into the thick underbrush, they lost sight of it. Slover knew exactly what he wanted to do and immediately set off following the bear tracks. McMines tried to talk him into waiting to see if the bear might come out of the brush somewhere else, but Slover was having none of it. He knew how to kill a grizzly, and nothing was going to talk him out of doing what he loved to do. Slover reloaded his rifle and approached the location that the bear had entered the brush. Just as Slover reached the edge of the brush, the giant grizzly stormed toward him in an ambush attack. The bear had crawled into the brush and turned around to see exactly whom or what was following him, and Slover had walked right up to it. As the bear tackled Slover to the ground, it tore at his scalp, severing a large patch of it. The old mountain man tried to crawl away, but the bear clamped its jaws onto one of his legs and broke it with a twist of its head. McMines was looking on, but was unable to get a good shot at the bear, as it savaged his hunting partner and friend. Slover tried to defend himself, but the old man was far too frail to resist such a powerful bear. The grizzly next clamped its jaws onto Slover's other leg and crushed the bones of it as well. Now unable to stand or crawl, Slover was nearly a defenseless target for the bear's rage. It bit into his arm and crunched it up and down, breaking it in several places. Seeing and hearing his friend being severely mauled by the angry grizzly, and knowing he could do nothing to save Slover, McMines headed his horse back down the mountain. He told residents of the area of Slover's devastating attack and mustered a rescue party. The small group of men cautiously approached the attack site and could see the bear laying dead near Slover. At first it seemed Slover was dead too, but as they approached they could see his chest heaving. They could see his head mutilated by the bear's claws and teeth. He had bruises and gashes covering his entire body. His body was contorted in ways far too damaging for any man to survive. The men couldn't pull any sensible comment from him as they tried to save him. He was on his deathbed due to the injuries the grizzly had inflicted on him before his bullet killed it. The rescue party brought Slover back down the mountain, and he hung on to life for 3 days, doted on by his loving wife. After he passed on, they buried him near his home he shared with Donna Barbarita. Though the city has sprung up around the valley, Slover Mountain still bears his name, and his legacy as a mountain man is cemented into the history books of the western United States and Mexico. Wow, the people back then had pretty interesting lives. After reviewing the details of this episode, I have a few questions for you. Why do you think such an experienced grizzly hunter would pursue a bear he didn't know was dead yet with such reckless abandon? Did you know that grizzlies once roamed where San Bernardino is now? What do you think drove people like Slover? Why didn't McMines do more to protect his friend? I'll be glad to read and respond to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it.
Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider clicking on the like button and clicking on the bell icon. We'll help you know when we post our new episodes. Posting our video links to your social media profiles furthers awareness, and it's fun. We slashed our prices in our merch store, linked below, so check out the bargains there while you shop. As a member of our human community, remember to adventure bravely and be careful out there, especially in bear country.